So hi all, I guess those that are here with us today and also those who are catching up on the recording. Like Al introduced, I am Michelle from South Africa, um, living in the Western Cape of South Africa. And I guess I've been on I would say, eco-psychology journey over the last 2 years. I guess worked in big corporate like many of us do, actually a tech company, very focused. I loved what you said earlier, Violetta, on the technology addiction. I think being in the people space of technology, even if it wasn't called that, I would say it definitely felt like that a lot of the time. Every time, even if employees were having issues or something like that, the answer was always, well, let's bring a new system in, let's even performance management, how do we automate this, how do we, and it became very much a separation, I would say, of true nature, human nature. It led me to a path of exploring alternatives. My health also took a bit of a dip. I was diagnosed with cancer, and again, it made me really look at my lifestyle, the world around me, the environment. And for me, it very much came down to the eco-psychology link, our detachment from the natural cycles, from the natural systems, from the environment, our environment, from nature. Um, my husband and I planted a mini food forest in our back garden, and that brought me back into connection. That brought me back into connection with the earth. It brought me back into connection with nature, with cycles, with the soil food web, with all of these wonderful things. And I guess that led me on a beautiful journey to start planting food forests at schools in low income to no income township areas in South Africa, where often access to food is very hard, and access to nature is pretty much non-existent. The mass urbanization has forced people to live in tiny tin shacks pretty much on top of each other. Every square piece of space that is available gets used up for living space, I guess, and it has created this very disconnect with nature. It also means that a lot of people that have urbanized still have, I guess, traditional homes back in the non-urban areas. And again, it's this disconnect, of this commercial way of life in the cities and then this very nature way of life back home. But the nature way of life you maybe get to enjoy 2 weeks out of the year if you're lucky. So it's been a very interesting journey. Now trying to actually bring this connection back to plant mini food forest, micro food forests a lot of the time. So we plant anywhere from 25 trees to 380 trees, depending on the space that we find available. And I plant them in what I call the margins. So a lot of times people talk about low to no income groups as the marginal society. But actually what I found is there is so much abundance in the margins. If looked after, if connected to, there is so much abundance. So we plant the food forests pretty much in the borders, kind of between the fences of the school and the buildings of the schools, in between the school classrooms, on the sidewalks, anywhere where we can find marginal space available. We're trying to bring that connection back to earth. Um, for me, it's yes, connecting to nature, but it's connecting us back to our food. It's understanding where our food comes from. It's not mass packaged, distributed way that we should be connecting with our food. We should be understanding, where our food comes from, what a healthy tree looks like, what an unhealthy tree looks like, what healthy plants look like. Understanding the nutrients that we're feeding to our plants is the nutrients that we're feeding to ourselves at the end of the day. If you're growing monocrop mass agriculture that's just fed on chemicals, you're just putting those chemicals directly into your own body at the end of the day. So it really is bringing, I mean, I think if somebody were to grow their own vegetable and then take the, I guess, fertilizer or the pesticide chemicals that most mass agriculture puts on our food and put that on your own food and then eat it? I don't think you would if you were in that direct contact with it, because you would actually see what's going on your food, you know. But it's so, in our day and age, hidden behind the systems. We're so disconnected from the systems that we don't know, and we choose to turn a blind eye to it. And I really loved this quote that I found when I was reading up on eco-psychology for this talk, and it says, "Awakening to the awareness of a wider Earth identity allows us to approach the environment with spontaneous respect, feeling an active part of ecosystems that are wider and more complex." And I think that's what we've lost. You know, it's easy for us to disrespect nature, to not even consider nature, because we're not in contact with it. We don't see the impact of it on a day-to-day basis. But for me, planting food forests, working with the soil, seeing how degraded and damaged and just sand soil is in a lot of these places, and then actually seeing healthy soil, you know, understanding what healthy soil looks like and feels like, and the bugs that live there, and the abundant microlife that is there, and understanding that's what our stomachs look like. That's what our healthy stomachs should look like. You know, if we had proper probiotics, you know, in our stomach, flora in our stomach, that's what a healthy stomach should look like. That's what healthy soil should look like. And I think the more we can bring any of us, all of us, back into that connection with human and nature, is a big win for us. Violetta, I loved how you started and you said, you know, the human and nature, and it's these two separate things. And that's exactly, I guess, for me, what I was hoping to talk about is that we need to bring that connection back. We're not two separate things. We are human nature. Nature is a part of us. We are a part of nature. And I loved it. So I was reading up on the Eco-Psychology International Society website, and they had this beautiful quote that said, "It is the entanglement of planetary health and human well-being." And I think that's the core of it, right? Is that if we have a healthy planet, we will have healthy humans. And we've lost that connection, unfortunately. So I guess the work that we're doing, or trying to do, to bring this connection back, is to plant food forests. And everyone's always like, what is a food forest? Well, it is really using the natural forest ecosystems to be our guides, to be our messages of this is how we should be growing food. You know, understanding, so using almost the biomimicry principles of understanding how naturally ecosystems are radiantly abundant, and if we just work with the ecosystems rather than trying to remove ourselves from them, we can create radiant abundance. So just as a forest ecosystem, you know, promotes the ability to work in groups with creative and constructive synergies necessary for the forest to thrive, I believe we need to learn from forest systems to really make it possible for our human species to survive. So as the forest ecosystems have tall trees to provide shade, you know, they've got the lower fruit-bearing trees that don't like the wind and so much direct sun, but produce abundantly in the mid-cap canopy, the shrub layers that produce beautiful berries, the root layers that hold everything together. So we need to form human ecosystems with support from government, who provides us. So we use the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Forestry to provide our infrastructure, to provide our trees, to provide our composts. We tap into more experienced community gardens to teach our gardeners how to work with natural ecosystems again. We bring I guess, awareness, I would say, custody back into school knowledge systems, and understanding that we are all in one. Sorry, I've got my talking block here over my other side of my things. We work with different NGOs and corporate sponsors. And actually, for me, one of the most amazing things is working with the old tech companies that I was working with, bringing them into these food forest spaces and getting their feedback of them saying, I didn't understand this is how the soil works. I didn't understand this is how trees, and vegetables work. And this has been probably the best day of my year, getting to learn these things. Getting them to put their hands in the soil, getting them to understand what healthy ecosystems look like. And they come back, all of these corporate sponsors come back to say, we'd love another opportunity. And bringing back the understanding of abundance, not just to be profit, but to be productivity of the land, of the people, and working with local community markets, and then all of it really with the ethos of helping the community members in whatever form that may be, whether it's food, whether it's skills, whether it's access to markets, whether it's just ability to connect with nature again, put their hands in the soil. So that's our project, and I think that's for me been a great lesson in eco psychology over the last 2 years. And I'll pass it back to you, Elle.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing about the project. I know that we've had conversations before as well, and you were sharing with me that some of the corporate sponsors that come and the people that actually spend a day on their volunteer days with their hands in the soil, really connecting with the kids, knowing that they're actually contributing to a food system to children that are less privileged. Could you tell us a little bit more about maybe, how that contributes back to the people actually doing the volunteering to assist?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it is that working with, and often, just like I was, I guess, before I dove into this space 2 years ago, is we get our food from the mass shops, we are privileged enough to have money to go and buy that food, whatever we like. It's always available in packaging. It looks all pretty, but bringing these corporate sponsors out and just broadening their awareness on both sides. One, in that there are so many in this country and in this world who do not have that access, to abundant food. So the schools that we work with, the government schools, they are dependent on the national feeding scheme, which means often the meals they get fed at school are the only meals that the children will get in the day. And it's not the highest quality food, it's usually a starchy, like a pup or a sump or something like that. Some beans if they're lucky, and maybe one vegetable if they're lucky, and once a week a fruit. And to have these corporate sponsors come out and just have this realization that there is a large portion of this country, this world that still lives like that. And then to see that, a solution to that can be just connecting back to nature. It can be, spending a day of your time coming and planting some plants and planting some trees and supporting these feeding schemes that are bringing nutrition into spaces that really need it, but also environmental education. So often there are I guess these corporate sponsors who walk away just so grateful for the I guess the awakening, the awareness of it, which I think is the biggest gift they walk away with. I think from the working within the communities that I'm working with, there's this huge feeling of care. People care enough to come and spend some time, to come and give back to the earth, to give back to the communities, and actually the courage for them to for them to see, because it's easy for us to avoid these areas, to avoid seeing these things. So yeah, I think it's, for me, huge benefits all around.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would love to open up the floor now to anybody who would have a question.
Michelle, Michelle, first of all, thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. And in fact, I have an observation to share with you, followed by a question. And my observation is, because I come from India, where metro cities are getting highly populated, overpopulated, and that is clearly impacting the overall quality of life, because everything right from air, water, food is polluted. Like you gave example of the food which is not so good for kids, and here the issue is not only with the food but also with the packaging, because the food is being offered in the plastic packages, and no matter how much you are ready to pay. So
Yeah.
there's a limitation to that. So and I have seen that in last 1 decade, people are shifting their priorities, especially urban Indians. So they are okay earning little less rather than staying in concrete jungle. And many people have moved towards Himalayas or towards beaches, Goa, and somewhere close to nature. But it is not feasible for everyone to move out of the urban, because not everybody has the same circumstances. People have different priorities in their life. So, what piece of advice do you have as to how eco psychology help vulnerable or urban population reconnect with nature while staying urban cities? Because we get up early in the morning, not with the chirping of birds, but with the traffic noise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, it is creating these little beautiful ecosystems that allow us to connect back, and using those marginal spaces. Like I say, it's all relative, right? But a relatively small garden. Some would say a micro garden, and we've managed to plant 36 fruit trees plus another 8 indigenous trees. I mean, sure, they're compact planting. We've got no grass left in our, garden, if you call it that. But it has created this beautiful ecosystem. The birds are back, the frogs are back. And I'm in the middle of a city, and it's this micro little ecosystem. It was so funny because we have these big birds, tarantala. I don't know what you call them in another language, but these big ground birds. They don't fly very much, but they fly every now and then, randomly in our garden, which you wouldn't find them anywhere in kind of these gardens. But I think, it must have been flying over and just seeing, well, this is the only green patch that's available, so let's go and explore in there. And I think that's it for me, is that, yes, we have to be in the urban space, but why do we have to make these two separate spaces? Yeah, we can have connection to nature everywhere and anywhere. We just got to realize that we are nature, for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. And I also have an observation. I don't know how is it in Europe, or I might not have observed it so closely. In India, you will find most of the temples on a top of the hill. Even our ancestors believed that's the best place for meditation, for spirituality, not only metaphorically the highest place, but also it is good for human beings. How is
Yeah.
it in Europe and other parts, if you have observed it? Is it
Yeah.
the same?
I'm not from Europe, I'm from Africa, so I can only give an African perspective. And South African perspective is so interesting because I guess it's got the Western South African side, which is very Dutch in influence. Their places of worship are generally churches, Christian churches, and I would say they generally city center, is generally where you would find them. But in a lot of the African traditional cultures, they don't have places as in buildings, but a lot of their traditions are walking out into the mountains. A lot of the coming of age traditions, a lot of the purifying traditions, a lot of these are being in the oceans, being in the rivers, being in the mountains, and it is intentionally around bringing that connection back to nature. It's not about being in a building, in the middle of somewhere. It's intentionally about being in nature, connecting with our ancestors, connecting with the earth. And I must say, being a a European South African, if I can call it that. I've actually resonated so much more with the African healing lineage and been so interested in that and bringing that indigenous knowledge back into planting of the food forests and working with the ecosystems than I have really, I guess, resonated with the European, places of worship, if we call them that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Violeta has a question.
Yes, Michelle, hello. Thank you very much again for your very holistic and lovely presentation about this topic. And I recall about 2 years ago, we were hosting you on a conference, Water and Soil, and you presented at that time your project in school and the whole video of how these gardens came about. So I was now wondering, it's been now 2 years, right, since this project's been going on, and what do you see in kids? Have they changed? You talked a lot about sponsors and your organizational point of view in your presentation, but what about the recipients of that, children? What kind of changes have you noticed in them since this garden project has been introduced in schools?
I'd say, and maybe it's just because kids are always more curious, but so for me, it's been safe places for them, I think has been a big thing. Just being able to be held in a safe place. And I think nature almost makes that feeling without, us needing to do too much work around it, which is great, so even in the school spaces, if the children are not part of the eco club or like actually learning about these sort of things, just being able to go and sit under a tree, versus a very harsh kind of concrete slab with no shade. It just gives these feelings of being safer, being more held. I would say is probably one of the softer observations that has been my favorite ones. It's not, okay, well, now all of a sudden, the kids have spun off these eco clubs that have done these things to change the world. I've seen kids' worlds changing around them, and their kind of reaction to this changing has been, for me, my favorite ones. Of course, there are the wonderful spin-off ones of empowerment and activism I've seen in the young generation, is all of a sudden when you start talking about, well, how bad, pollution is for us, how bad plastic is for us, how bad chemicals, and, we're polluting our food with these chemicals, almost the activism and empowerment it switches on in these young children, because now all of a sudden they're surrounded by this awareness that, these things are not good for us, but it is in their full surroundings. So it's almost igniting this activism in the youth, which I think is beautiful to see. And custodianship, it's this connecting back into nature and understanding that if we don't do something about it, I don't want to say nobody will, but it's on us to do something about it, to be the change we want to see. That I've seen. To be honest, I haven't yet found the magical unlock key to make kids excited about vegetables. They are still not excited about vegetables. But actually being in the garden, actually being with the plants, being with the trees, I think for me has been the great change that I've seen with the kids.
Maybe along the question that Rajni also raised about the old ways and the way how, we potentially are reconnecting to our ancestors through reconnection with the nature. And especially in Slovenia, where I'm originally of, and even in Scotland, where I'm currently while this session is going on, we, until 14th century, we had a really, really strong connection with nature. Then, because of the religious reasons, that started to diminish. But we see a huge revival now, not only in Slovenia, but throughout Europe. this revival of reconnected with the history of ancestors and, of course, reconnection with the nature, somehow it seems like they've been, walking hand in hand. So I was wondering if you have noticed that through this reconnection with plants and trees and flowers has brought more awareness to the kids about the ancestors' knowledge, about maybe cross-generational reconnection that could potentially happen through reconnection with nature.
Yeah. And I definitely think so. At least it has for me. I struggle to speak on others' behalves and to speak on the children's behalves, but for me, it definitely has. I think, even just working with a lot of the traditional cultures or the ancient cultures here within South Africa, I've been working a lot with the Khoi San, with the Khoi culture, not so much with the San, two separate, but with the Khoi. And even the language, the clicks in the language used to be the ways you would communicate with the birds. And that's why there's so many clicks in the language, because it would be, understanding the birds, understanding the frogs. And it's unfortunately a language that's now mostly been lost. Very few continue to talk the original Khoi click language, But working with some of the elders and being with some of the elders and just seeing their natural connections with the plants, the natural connections with the life around them, the natural connections, for me, it's awoken this huge interest in, like no scientist I know can actually communicate, with animals, but there are through these traditional cultures, there are these ways that people can. And like science for me is now only starting to catch up on some of these things that these beautiful ancient knowledge has been there for so long, but we cut ourselves off from it for some reason, like you say, religion, politics, economy, whatever it is, we cut ourselves off for some reason. But it's still there if we can tap into it in some way. So it's definitely awakened in me a huge respect, a huge curiosity into some of the ancient traditions, for sure.
I would love to echo what you're saying, and I think one of the most I think important things for us is to in ways to inspire ourselves and everybody else in terms of reconnecting with nature. And I think it's really also through like unpacking and untangling stories that we've been told. And I remember when I was working also with the Girls Project in South Africa, observing them having such fear around nature. And I find that everywhere globally, people have been told some stories around fearing nature that is very interesting. And my own story around fearing nature that came from my lineage was around snakes. And so I was taught growing up in a small holding that like lots of different things about snakes, but saw also my elders around me behaving in fear of snakes and killing snakes. And so it took me some time in my adulthood to really unpack this. And if anybody is listening, the best way for us to really lose our fear of nature is, one, to get super curious, learn about the thing that you're really afraid of. And so I got really, really curious about snakes. And then, of course, how life supports you. I was then living in another small holding, also doing some permaculture. And of course, the second you start working with nature and you're creating an ecosystem, nature it's amazing how that ecosystem starts thriving. And you start seeing birds and then frogs and then dragonflies. And you can do this in urban areas. You don't need a large amount of space. And the snakes came. And I had to really sit with this. And one of the most ancient, oldest creatures. And I had to make peace with it. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And so I'm always curious about what are the stories, stories of disconnect. How can we retell a different story for us to, again, learn about the amazing creatures around us and how it's all one living organism, and how each part of the ecosystem is super valuable. Without that apex predator, the whole ecosystem kind of like collapses. We need all parts. I would say get curious and unpack the stories. Let go of the stories that no longer serve us around fear of nature. Ivana, please go ahead.
Why, hello. As I'm sat in an English garden under a pear tree, Michelle, you'd definitely appreciate that. So I suppose, a bit of observation, and there's a bit of a question as well for you, Michelle. Well, first of all, amazing presentation, and it's just so empowering to see what's possible and the impact what you're doing can create in the world. And I love some of that in UK for British schools as well, for sure. So at some point it'd be lovely to talk about that. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in Croatia. Grew up in a city on a 10th floor overlooking the coastline. So I don't think I've really truly appreciated the connection to nature I have had growing up until now. I'm a mother and live in UK. And as a family, we had this an hour away from a city, a space that parents bought and built a house, and it's nature in the middle of nowhere. It's sort of place where, well, my sister and I spent all of our summers, 2.5 months of summers in our culture then. And my parents, well, we were spending with my grandmother, but parents would come over for weekend. This is how clean it was. We could smell the petrol of the car before we could hear the sound and them actually arriving. It's just an amazing, so nice to be able to think about those moments and the way it really isn't like so these days. And again, living in UK and having children of my own, who always have been, I think, connected to the nature by the very nature as well. It's been really beautiful to see. So interesting when we had the COVID years and schools have shut down here. Most of the time they spend it up the trees, and I used to initially worry, like, oh my God, how getting on with sort of work, academic work, and I thought, no, like, this is probably the biggest value that COVID lockdown has given them, that they actually have established that connection with the nature. But I was kind of wondering, Michelle, you talked a little bit about educational aspect of it. How open are schools or educational system within South Africa to kind of embrace that as part of a curriculum itself, rather than just an amazing project that it sits currently alongside educational system, but is there a possibility or door that might be open there? And I just wonder whether something like that you explored yet or are looking to explore.
So we're slowly weaving those connections, but I do think it takes time. So here in South Africa, I guess they do have natural sciences, which is like your biology and I guess, and environmental sciences and things like that. But it is very much, I would say, still there's an eco club of interested kids, and they are interested. And it is like you say, kind of stand outside of the school curriculum system. And then within the school curriculum system, we try and weave in those connections. So, hey, you're learning about a bean sprouting, like you actually sprout the bean, you come and plant it in the garden and you come and observe how it grows. You're learning about dichotomous and, seed types, and you come and you actually observe these different seed types in the garden. So I guess it's been more of we're trying to do it as a pull and as an attraction of, hey, teachers, here's a teaching tool for you. you know, a way to get the children out of the classroom, a way to get them, but we haven't managed to really integrate it into the curriculum. There's obviously a lot of eco schools, or there's a lot of, I guess, specific schools that are now starting to stand up more and more, that it's actually the main part of their curriculum, and they weave maths and they weave English and they weave all these other subjects into understanding environment and understanding I guess, nature versus the other way around. But I'd say generally across the South African school syllabus, it's still very much there's a side project and we're still teaching in the old ways.
Thank you.
Maybe just a quick comment, if I may, to this, because I think it's a very important subject. These eco schools, which being in a part of elementary education and also kindergarten education, are really delivering on its purpose. And we see them, like the country I know best, the whole system on a country level, where they have ambassadors of eco schools, and they really organize that little gardens around the school, around the kindergartens, that the kids, as you said, Michelle, see how things are growing, what it takes from a seed to become a plant and to get a fruit or a vegetable out. Which is an incredible experience throughout the seasons that which we have. We live in the climate framework where we have 4 seasons. So of course, every season brings something else. In the tropics, it's a completely different story. And it's great that the kids learn their own processes and their own ways of supporting the nature to support them. Michelle, you remember in January, we were in Cuba, and we started with the city gardening in Cuba. And I'm fascinated how much has developed just in a poor 4 or 5 months, where now they have these programs for gardens in schools, and they're trying, it's, you know, the self-confidence has grown so much. And they see that the kids love it. The kids love to learn about how to grow their own food, how to, you know, raise their own plants from a seed and then plant them in the garden. So this is such a beautiful hands-on process, and reconnects us and heals us, of course, because you remember, Michelle, that beautiful lady who's healing the wounds of the boys who've been either abused or have really bad experiences through the gardening. And they learn about love, taking care of somebody, taking responsibility for something. And those stories are just fascinating. And it's something that really tells a lot about humanity and our true entanglement with the planet and the nature itself.
Michelle, since Violeta brought up the topic of self-healing properties of nature through wound healing, through this story, through this anecdote which Violeta has just shared, I have a question for you if you're comfortable answering it, because it's been your personal journey. And if I'm not wrong, during your introduction, you told us that you have been a cancer survivor, right? So I want to understand, since you are such a big believer in nature and nature healing properties, during that phase of time when you had so much of turbulence going on in your head, did you draw more strength from the nature healing or through the treatment which was being given by the modern science? And please be honest about it if you're
No,
comfortable.
absolutely. Absolutely. So for me, I would say, obviously, well, at the beginning, it was an interesting time for me because it was literally March 2020. So just as we went into all the COVID harsh lockdowns, the same time I was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. So as we were going into, you know, isolation and you can't see anyone and you can't leave your house, all of a sudden now I was needing to go for all these doctor's tests and go to all these hospitals and get all these treatments and all of these things. There was a lot of fear around it, I would say. And because of that, I very much went into the traditional treatment, the chemotherapy, the surgery, you know, full steam ahead. This is what's going to save you. But at the same time, we started planting our mini food forest in our back garden. So I kind of had these 2 healing processes for me going on together. And honestly, for me, I think working with nature and my food forests had way more to do with my healing and the reconnecting back to myself and understanding my own systems. Yes, the chemo treatment kills those few cancer cells that were not acting very well at the time. Yes, the surgery removes the big risk at the time, but reality is we all have cancer in our bodies all the time. And unless we're looking after our immune system, unless we're looking after our mental health, unless we're looking after our spiritual health, unless we're looking after the food we're choosing to put in our bodies, the cancer will just come back. So working with nature and seeing nature as this beautiful self-healing system woke me up to the fact that this body is a beautiful self-healing system. And the only way I'm going to continue to stay cancer-free is if I treat it as that. So for me, I did do the chemo, I did do the surgeries, but I've watched so many, through my process since then. My mother's been diagnosed with lung cancer, my brother with throat cancer. And I've had very close observations of this Western medicine way. And for me, working with the natural systems is now my way. And it's definitely brought me way more healing than I think any of the Western systems did. You're on mute, sorry.
Thank you so much. Because you might be knowing that in our previous session, we invited 3 cancer survivor women and in the month of June who shared their powerful stories of surviving and thriving. And fortunately, this time you are here to share yours. And I truly believe that every story gives people immense mental strength and hope. People who are going through the same phase because they need hope. Hope is a very big word for anyone who is going through this unfortunate situation or you know so I believe that it was important to tell your story. That is why I sort of requested you, and thank you so much.
No, thank
I
you.
hope, yeah, it will definitely help people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for also sharing your story. Rajni is correct. It really is a powerful and inspiring kind of like story for each person. And I was wondering if we could also open up another discussion in terms of one of the key points that you also shared, Violetta, which was also about digital detox. And I think that when we're looking at healing with nature and we're looking at reconnection, we have to really become cognizant of our digital addiction. So I often say, if we want it to be healthy and we want our mental health to thrive, and we want to really do well, we have to look at our relationship to everything around us. Everything really at its core comes down to our relationships. And we know that codependent relationships are not healthy. But at the moment, we really have to look at the most codependent relationship we have, which is this little device. And so when it comes to mental health and well-being, some habits that I do my best to do well in is not to look at the phone first thing in the morning and first thing in the evening. And I would invite everybody that's listening to do that for 1 week and see how you feel, see how you sleep. There's so much research now that tells us about the blue light, the overstimulation, and how that affects your mental health and sleeping. Most of us are not sleeping well. And these bodies really need good, solid rest in order for it to really function as this ecosystem or organism, 100%. I think that also when it comes to our children that are being raised in a world of technology, how do we, and I would love to open up this discussion if anybody would like to share, how do we help our children reconnect with nature in a way where there's a balance between technology, and so that we really assist for us to not really enable this movement towards transhumanism? And so I would open the floor to Violetta, Rajni, anybody. But I would love to start with Violetta's thoughts, and then we can open up the discussion from there.
Well, if I can be even more provocative, Eleftheria, thank you very much for bringing this topic forward as well, even though we are running a little bit out of time to really go into extensive discussion, but I hope we'll get back to it at some other session. I think it's really the result of industrial focus and market economy, which is trying to sell technology as the vision and not only as a tool. So using technology as a tool is great. It's helping us to be better people. It's helping us to do our jobs better. It's helping us even to bring back the value to nature, not only zero effect, but even create value. But as soon as you put it as a vision, like transhumanism has done it, like a vision that this is the goal, not just a tool, then of course you refocus all the actions and align them with this vision. So here it's really the humanity, each individual and our collective consciousness to break through that dust, if I can say, and bring technology back as a something that can help us, which means that they cannot enslave us. We're talking about digital slavery today. Because as Michelle actually mentioned, we try to digitalize everything, every relationship that we have, every single process and action in order to increase the efficiency. But this efficiency is bringing us to an edge of isolation. Replacing human activity with digitalization at every step means we are basically making ourselves obsolete. On the other hand, completely dependent on those technologies. So I believe that we are now moving towards the mid of 21st century. We are invited to bring this into a balance. I don't think we're gonna the future is without technology, but in a good balance where we, of course, allocate time for human relationships, for relationship with the nature, and then use technology to support our higher quality of life. But for that, we need a high level of awareness. Right now, we are swinging towards profitability for efficiency and basically towards replacing human activity in society with technology. And that, I think, is driving us crazy. It's pushing us into this virtual world as the only world. And maybe I can share quickly a model which now we use a lot, or I use personally a lot when I lecture. Yes, we have all these three natures now around us, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as they're in balance. It's the nature which is through institutions and urban space. It's been defined as a human-based communities, which is fine. And they have their own rules. But on the other hand, we have created this virtual space again with their own rules. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is also this nature that is holding everything together, which is this earth ecosystem, which we started to ignore and push away, and we're not seeking the proper balance. So then too often people get trapped in one of these subsystems that are human only, and we became so human-centric in all our solutions. And of course, because we are nature, that is causing internally a lot of conflicts and is bringing our systems down. Our health system is deteriorating. Our mental capacity to understand the complexity of the world is deteriorating, and we are more and more allowing that technology takes over. AI, it's not official intelligence, it's just a high capacity machine that can process a huge amounts of data in a very systematic and technological way. But that's not intelligence, right? That's just a huge capacity in delivering. And we're trying now to limit our activities, our mindsets into what this technology can deliver. I mean, this is obscene. So of course it's causing conflicts. Of course it's causing mental challenges in order to, when humans, as we are, as a holistic beings, try to also act on a spiritual, emotional, social, energetic level, not only on physical, intellectual. So yes, and it's not only kids, it's the same. Adults are part of the same game, and so my suggestion, my approach, I mean, who am I to advise, but I try to live by, is that I really go out and I invite my kids, I invite everybody around me. Let's meet in nature. I stop meeting in-house. Let's meet in the garden. Come and see me up in my mountain house. Let's sit down at the stream and talk. Let's sit under the tree and talk. So it will require a strong effort because we have swung into one direction so bluntly, and we will have to make an effort to bring it in balance and find the way forward. So, but I would love to hear all of your reflections. Thank you for just maybe setting the tone.
Thank you so much, Violetta, for that insight. Any closing reflections?
I would like to add to what Violetta has said. I think as a society, because I believe your question was rather focused on the younger generation, and I think as a parents, we have far greater role to play that way. Also, I believe that striking a balance between the digital world and nature is highly subjective matter. Because if you ask anyone how much time you spend every day on digital medium, people don't have record. Even if you ask me how much time, I will not be able to give you precisely how many hours I have been spending, because it has become such an integral medium of living the life. We have been doing everything through this digital medium, so it is almost very difficult to differentiate between how much time we are living in digital world and how much time we are spending with nature. Having said that, I believe that mental discipline should be an integral part of education, in schools and colleges. And additionally, sense of responsibility should be encouraged, and parents have to play great role in that. They have to become role model first. I can only tell my child to spend less time on digital medium if I start practicing it.
Absolutely.
And just one more thing, Rajni, if I may, because yes, we can take our kids to nature, but kids are seeking connections with their peers, the same as we are seeking connections. And I learned as a parent that in order to get my kids out and let them enjoy hikes and playing in the along the streams and in the meadows, we needed to come together, 2 or 3 families that they had an opportunity to connect with their peers. And then there was no problem whatsoever. They
Right.
never asked for any phone or computer or anything, right? So maybe there is an opportunity that we as parents also realize that the same as we are seeking connections, kids are seeking connections as well. And creating that kind of space would probably be easy to pull them away from technology, because that's where they create connections. They found technology as a way of creating their own connections.
True, absolutely.
Maida, how is in Serbia? Because you guys have also lots of challenges. How do you deal with that? And how do you perceive this topic in Serbia?
So thank you very much for these excellent presentations and discussion. In Serbia now is in very difficult time, but it's not main topic in this related to this. I can share my experience because I doing something similar like Michelle. I'm from Novi Sad. Novi Sad is the second city in Serbia, and we have about 500,000 people almost. And there are a lot of schools, and I am working with schools a lot through some projects, and I observed that children have some disconnection with nature, but they use a lot of phones, they are violence, they are not connected between themselves, especially after the COVID time. And I decided to take something about that. I started to build gardens in schools. And that's the idea which I name Bastologia. It's on our language, but something like translation that is gardenology, something like that. And what is important in this story, we start to build high beds for growing vegetables, and that connect all the families, grandparents, parents, school teachers, all everybody are involved in that process. How to build that, how collect materials, to take something recyclable, not to buy new, to take all the things, all furniture or something like that. So we built high beds. Then we started to make compost, not to throw food waste on some waste field, just to put to school and make some composters and start to build that substance for growing vegetable and collect seeds. And through the school year, we finished with, for example, in one school, we finished with 7 high beds. We involved 7 classes of that lower level of schooling. And at the end of the school, we have some presentations of that where we have like a guest all the parents, grandparents, community, and so on. And that was a great experience because we make that connection, which was very important. Connections between people, connection with nature, and building some new values for schools. That was very important in that moment, and it is important now because our schools last school year have in strikes, and they have very disorder and unusual type of schooling. And I think that next school year on September will be a great challenge for everybody. And I believe that our Bastologia will be one of the good ways to solve that problem. And what was also very important, pupils stop to be violence between each other. And I spent almost 4 years in this program with one school, and now we have intergeneration education because the past generation of pupils start to work with younger, spend times with them on some free time in schools. I don't know the word in English, but when they have a pause for the between the lessons, they spend together and teach each other how to work with plants. Now they are not afraid of the worms, of bees, of any other bugs. They love them. They also learn how to purifying wastewater, to save clear water, not to spend it to bring the plants and so on. It was very complex story, but what was very important for me that we connect all together to work that, not to go to shop and buy something that is important for that, but to collect, make everything, handmade everything, recycling, not waste food, not anything out of the process, and make that a circle between people, between plants, between nature, and so on. And what I noticed that time, they don't use mobile phones, only make two pictures to send to show to parents what they do in their classrooms. So that's my little experience, but I think that it's very useful, and I would like to share them with other schools in, I believe, in Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maida, for that sharing of this amazing project. And I think it's really showing us a living example of how of the healing capacity of ecopsychology, and also the healing of nature, bringing together intergenerations, getting people to be creative in terms of building everything. And I loved what you were saying, losing the fear of all the bugs. And that's exactly how we lose our fear of nature and reconnect with it. Thank you for that wonderful example.
Thank you. Maybe I want to mention something else. Maybe it's not so close to this topic, but very important also. Unfortunately, in my country, we have a lot of problems with some opposite side of the good nature. We have a lot of problems with waste fields, with air pollution, with water pollution, and so on. And that is one of the reasons that nature on that way have influence of the mental health of people. I'm on some way I'm a journalist also, and I have an interview with some psychologist a few months ago, and we talk about it, how much mental disease is growing, and starts to some people, unfortunately, owing to some of that problems in our environmental in cities especially. Maybe it's good topic for some other session or some other occasion, but I have to mention that because we really have problem with that, and I think that is problem that have no borders. And that is maybe the problem for whole West Balkan and maybe whole South Europe, because there are small countries, and there are a lot of unsolved problems of that area of environmental protection and nature protection. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maida. Very, very, very important point. And I think this is where we can come together as a global community to learn from one another, and how we can support one another to actually also come together. As much as what nature heals us, we also have to heal her. And so I think that's a beautiful point, all of us coming together. And we'll definitely stay in touch and see if we could create something like that, where we can all come together and learn. And so I think being mindful of time, I would love to thank you all for coming together in this very, very important topic. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing in such a beautiful presentation. And thank you, Maida, for sharing. I think connecting, imagine what we could co-create together for schools. And thank you so much again, my collaborators, Violetta and Rajni, for always being such an incredible support to me and for bringing this year of mental health together. And so I think we've learned a lot today, but I would invite us all to, in our own way, spend some time in nature and to bring some more balance into our lives. I think what we've learned is an ecosystem in balance is a really, really healthy ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lefteria, for bringing yet another great session to a closure. I'm inviting you to stay connected, especially Ivana. Hopefully you'll join us in the future sessions and maybe in some projects. Get in touch with either Eco-Civilization Note in UK or in Croatia. And I also like to make a little announcement. We are in the process of finalizing the foundation of Eco-Civilization, where we hope to bring these projects then together on a global scale on a higher level of collaboration. I hope that will start happening in the fall. We're just waiting for our ministry to give us the registration number. Everything else is ready. So then, Michelle, we will be able to support you in some of the projects that you already initiated, and we could not give you financial support, but let's hope that will be in better shape in the future. And it's great to see maybe Maida, you and maybe Ivana, you could all join forces and bring this more on a global level. They are also in Slovenia. They are members of our community who are also involved in eco schools and eco gardening. And now with our Cuba note, which is really vibrant, also trying to do the same on an urban level to bring the gardens back to the cities and especially use the circular economy and the rules of permaculture and regenerative economy in order to make it sustainable and resilient. So it's exciting to continue these conversations, and only with building up the awareness we can hope then for some tangible results in practice as well. So
Thank you.
all the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you so much.